Thank you. So the next speaker is Daniel Roos, and he's going to talk about the topic Python and Excel, a big step for finance. Thank you.
Hey. Okay, so hi everyone. And I don't know if you missed the big news, but August 22nd, Microsoft released the bomb that Python and Excel were joining forces. So this got me super excited because I'm an old-time user of both. So do a little bit of background there why this is exciting. I've been using Excel for 30 years and hacking VBA, which is VBA is the kind of language inside Excel. I've been using Python for 20 years, so love that and much more than VBA. I've been using it mainly in finance, and I think Excel is really big in the financial area. I've been working in banking and with trading systems, and I've seen Excel at every single customer. We deliver these million-dollar trading systems, and people say, can we get that into Excel? Looks like Excel is what we really like. Previously built COM integrations. I built this Excel integration using like the Microsoft COM technology and Python Win32. Horrible stuff. Don't go there. It's like not worth it. Can I start with show of hands? How many people here have used Excel? Good, so we've got an audience. And just curious, how many people use Google Sheets? Okay, so actually more Excel users, that's nice. Okay, and just what I'm doing now and a little bit connection here. I was sitting with Excel and putting all my finances in there to get an overview. So adding in my savings, pensions, figuring out when I could retire. That got boring, so I founded Njorda with a co-founder, which is what I'm doing now. It's what we do is collect all your savings, investments, and pensions, analyze it, give you good analytics. It's totally free. We make our money on B2B, so selling it to the banks. But if you're interested in finance, if you want an overview, give it a try. Now back to why you should care. So I care because I worked with it, but I think a lot of people should be interested in Python and Excel because there's simply a lot of Excel users. 750 million users, some kind of stat I found. There's about 4 to 10 million Python developers. It's actually hard to find statistics because Microsoft is basically not marketing Excel. They're not going out and saying, we're big, we've got a lot of users, because it's just Excel. It's like huge. Career-wise, if you look at high-end, high-paying jobs or any kind of finance jobs, Excel is like a base requirement. So I think we can make the case that Excel is important and interesting from a Python perspective. Seeing Google Trends, actually, is Excel dying? You get these, stupid Reddit questions. Is it worth learning Excel, etc. Excel actually has a nice bump towards end here, so it's definitely much alive and growing. And now it's getting on the web. I think they're catching up with Google Sheets, and the web version will become usable at some point. It's not great. So Excel on Windows is awesome. Excel on anything else is like not the same experience. It's super useful, like if you're going to do some modeling, we're running a startup, we have to do this growth, we have to do the hockey curves for the investors. You're always doing that in Excel. I'm super comfortable with Python. I know SciPy, everything. I'm not going to do basic graphs in there. I'm going to do it in Excel because it's just faster. It's like the Swiss Army knife from hell. You can do anything with it. If you can code, you can do even more. And finally, you can make money. I actually found it's an esport. So in Las Vegas, or the finals, this was on ESPN, so it's basically a live stream. you can sign up, and there's a $25,000 prize purse. So there's like 30-minute sessions, they get these insane Excel challenges, and you have like the esports commentators going like, is he going to use VLOOKUP or go for the filter solution? So grab a beer, have fun, don't tell your friends. Okay. But so the big question then, we have VBA. So there's one programming language in Excel, focusing on why would you want to put 2 languages in one product? That sounds weird. What's Microsoft doing here? So Visual Basic application, it's old, it's not actively developed. Even Microsoft says so. I think it's like 12 years since the last feature. On the popularity rankings, always take these with a grain of salt. VBA has a lot of users, but it's way down there. Python is way up there, so of course Microsoft is thinking about getting something more popular in there. VBA also has, questionable constructs. I won't bash too hard on it, but just to give a flavor for the newbies who haven't tried it. Error handling. So in Python we have, try catch, etc. except here we get on error resume next, for example. So it's a wonderful statement. You put this in your code. Any error occurs, the program will silently ignore the error and go to the next line. And I just leave that thought there for like the kind of hard bugs you can get when people liberally use this as error handling. Okay, so what's Microsoft saying? If you look at their marketing copy, it's saying supercharge your data analysis and tell better stories with Python and Excel. So storytelling is good. And their focus is pretty much on like the AI ML, surprise. So like, Python is the #1 AI language. You want to do like, say, forecasting in Excel. I have like some sales data. I want to figure out seasonality-wise, what's the forecasting going to be next year. Great libraries in Python for that, not so much in Excel. But they're also highlighting the plotting capabilities. That was a surprise. Excel has like really good graphs. It's quite nice. So I was surprised seeing that they're all in the marketing highlighting the plotting. And actually Seaborn and some of the Python libraries are really good. So that is one thing they're pushing. Now, how it works, I'll give you the short version and then we jump into a demo. It's actually super simple. There's one new Excel function called py, which just activates Python mode. In Python, you get one new function called Excel, which basically grabs data from Excel. And Microsoft takes care of running it in the cloud, sandboxed, and it just works. So in Excel, I tried zooming in. I'll try to speak. Bear with me if it's small in the back there. You can't zoom everything in the UI. So I can do this magic function, and instantly it turns green, Python green. And I can do 1 + 1. It's busy, and it's 2. This could be Excel 2, of course, so not the best demo. So let's instead do something that proves that it's Python. There. Let's do import sys, and then sys.version. The last statement is returned as a value to Excel, so I don't need to print or anything. 3.916. Okay, so we've got Python. It's definitely Python in there. First thing to notice, this is kind of different. So if you're normally used to Excel, what you do with VBA and other languages and previous Excel add-ins is that you call functions. So you would have something like this. Now I'm using VBA here just to show the difference. So it says like Mully 33, and then I look at, okay, I have an editor, my Visual Basic editor. I've declared a function, Mully, I can call it from Excel. So the big difference here is they are actually putting the code into the cells. So you're not writing a Python file and calling functions from Excel. You're actually just pasting the Python code into Excel cells, and it's executing. So it's much more like notebooks than a traditional like integrate code into Excel solution. So clearly inspired by like the Jupyter notebooks. And then some more, we had the Python version. You need to get data in from Excel, right? So you can basically just do that by using the Excel function. So a normal Excel style, I can take the cell D6 plus Excel D7 and add those two together, and I get the value 9. If you're used to Excel, you know that it gets horrible with just having all these references. It's really hard to read code that says D6 plus D7, and you end up getting bugs and your finances are off. So you love something called named ranges. So in Excel, I can take a value here, and it's, let me show you. You see it at the very, very top corner there, it says USD-SIC. I can't zoom in on that, but I can name the value for the cell. And then in Python, I can use that, so I can write code which actually kind of makes sense. Great. Now, what's kind of creepy, but actually not that bad, is like the namespacing. So I have cells, and great individual cells, but there's a common kind of namespace, just like in notebooks. So if I first have one cell here, where I declare factor as being 1.11223344. And then I have another cell here where I declare a function times 10. So I just declare a Python function here that multiplies the value by 10. Then in a third cell, I can use these. So I can do times 10 by factor, and it writes 11. So we see that Excel is basically taking whatever I do in the Python cell, and it's running it into a common Python module or a namespace. And it's all there. So I can structure my Excel code kind of nicely in parts using cells. A little bit scary, because if I have the same thing in two of them, say I put this one, I change the factor here. So the factor was 1.11. Here I write factor equals 20. then, oh, now it's 200. So I declare the same variable twice, the last one wins. So good thing to keep in mind. Okay, for doing data analysis in Python, you have pandas, you have NumPy. Those are the big gorillas. That's what you want to use. And Microsoft definitely picked up on that. So they made the pandas data frame kind of a native value that works really well. So if I have a table in Excel where I declare some ingredients for a sandwich, cheese, apple, bread, the cost and the number of them, I can pick that up in Python. And it's basically just using the Excel function here. Let me scroll over a bit so you can see it. So I just say Excel, I give it the whole range for the whole table. I say headers is true. And what this does is just return, it says data frame, but I can click on it. It shows me a nice card. Then I see exactly what it is. So Python's basically being passed the data frame. We're creating one from the Excel data. And you can see a little teaser down here that it says Anaconda. So we'll get back to that, why it says Anaconda in Excel. I think you can guess. Then with the data frame, we can do all the normal things, describe it, get the data, work with it in a nice way, like this. So this lets you use like all the power of pandas data frames, grouping, fast operations, large amounts of data right from Excel. And you can also go back. So if I, in Python, just create some data, apple, oranges, durian, return this as a regular data frame. So basically any Python code that spits out a data frame, just return that to Excel, and then Excel does beautifully and just shows it as a table. So it just works in Excel. This, of course, brings us to plotting. So here is a quick example. I loaded one of the like super standard data sets, this iris data set that's used for like various flowers and genetics. It's available in sklearn as a standard one. So just loading this data set, clicking there, we can see that it's petal length and width, etc. I get that out into Excel, you can see the table. But then I can also just plot it. So I import Seaborn. Could it please zoom in on this? Let's see. There we go. Now I see better. So I'll just uncomment this so I don't have to type so much there. Busy, so it's kind of slow. You see it's kind of slow, busy, things going to the internet and back. But eventually it's going to produce a little graph here. If you give it a second. So that's also worth mentioning. The data's locally and the computation is running on the cloud. There's a plot. So yeah, great. I got a big plot. You can actually make the cell better, but they also have this button. So you get it as a big picture that you can paste in. So that's kind of nice. The default view is like, you're like, what have they done? It is a beta, I'll get back to that. So one last idea how you can use this. This is like the infrastructure. So we covered like how you kind of access Python from Excel. Why would you kind of want to do this? We'll get into that, but take one example that's a bit different. Say I'm a startup, I have this complicated pricing function for how I set a price for my users based on like number of units, market, etc. We want to try out some versions here, we want to model it. Then I can write this Python function in here. So I basically put my real pricing function in Python in here. In Excel, I can then just call this function. So pricing of the number of units. Expand this down. And now it's going to hopefully build this graph. So it's going to make multiple calls. And it's still working. So this is like my one complaint. It is kind of slow right now. You see this little, I think it's recalculating the whole sheet. So you can't set it in a mode where you trigger recalculation. So just do it manually so you don't have to deal with this. There you go. And then you can see, my pricing function has kind of a jump. Of course, this is kind of bad. I realized that less than 5 units, they should cost 10. But of course, then you're paying less for the ones above. So I should probably have something that you pay, subtract the first 4 units, because of those you're paying 40 for. See if this works. I think you get the point. So we can change the function, tweak it, and it's very quick of taking Python code and interactively kind of working with it inside your Excel sheets, and then you can send this to finance or the growth hackers, and they can have the same model in there. Yeah, trust me, it works. We'll go on while it's kind of working. Quick one for those that are kind of interested in like how it kind of works. You can play around as Python. So of course you're curious that like, okay, what kind of thing is Microsoft running this in? So you can look at the path, which is kind of weird. There's some new libraries in there. This Excel function, what is it really? We can see there's a module called Excel initialize. We can poke around in there. We can see lots of like client time zone, execution context, core. There's some analytics tracking. The flights here is some kind of tracking thing. And we can see all the libraries. So it's a very full-featured Python installation. So if you want to dig deep, it's Python, so you can actually introspect and see what they're doing in there. Okay, back to the slides. That was just a quick demo. Just hit me up if you want a copy of the sheet or something. Quick recap. Python function, brilliant, just one thing, gets into Python mode. Excel function just lets you grab data from Excel. Big note here, unlike VBA, you can't automate Excel. So the big draw with maybe still using VBA is that you can create new sheets, automate things, send email, etc., do like run Excel. You can't do this with Python, it's purely for data in and out. Data frames, native, pass back and forth, works great. Execution order, this was one I mentioned. In the docs, they're like Python cells execute in row major order. You're like, what the heck? And then you realize that's the direction it goes. So you need to think about that when you're building the sheets. Otherwise, you kind of get confused. But it is a bit like notebooks. So if you're kind of used to that thing, that all your things are going into a global namespace and you're fine with global variables, it's not a problem. Again, Anaconda appears to be the partner, so well known. They're also doing the package manager Conda that we just mentioned. So really nice to see that Microsoft didn't roll their own. They just partnered with a big Python player, so we can kind of trust the distribution. It will be updated when out of beta. So if you think that Python 3.9 sounds icky, I'm sure Microsoft will update that. At least they're saying they will. Mention this one, interesting model, local data, cloud compute. Once they get it onto all platforms, this will be better. Once you can kind of run it in the cloud, I guess. Will be interesting to see what they do here. Right now, it is very slow. So now it's good for maybe batch work. If you have a big set of data, toss it to a machine learning model, do a lot of work, get it back. This kind of stuff I was showing with a lot of like calls gets slow very fast. Now, how can this be useful for both for Python people and for Excel people? For the Excel developers, this is nice. They get access to all our AI ML libs, so doing forecasting. They get the visualizations and an escape from VBA. We kind of covered that. So hopefully this will bring in some of the 750 million Excel users who now realize they can like copy-paste nice code. It's already like all over YouTube, and if you follow these streamers with like, 1 million viewers who are basically doing Excel functions, they are covering this too. So it's going to get traction. For you guys, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see this for testing code. Like you can put it into Excel, you can do a lot of like, nice tests, quickly generate, see it visually. It's also good at UI. So if you're working with, people who are non-technical, you can't send them, or you can't even tell them to do pip install and do this and run it on your machine because they work in finance. But you can send them an Excel sheet. And maybe you don't want to build a web service for everything. So take the Python code, put it in Excel, make some nice graphs, have some inputs. Here are your like parameters. Send it off. People can play around with it. And they're like, hey, this doesn't work when I put a 7 in here. And you have the whole thing working. So it's sort of like Jupyter notebooks, but with everything in Excel. And you can email them to people who just don't want to do other things. So I think that's probably a big one to start with. Really nice way of just sending Python code to people that they can use. Oh, and job-wise, skill-wise, like if this gets more mainstream, suddenly Python and Excel becomes much more interesting, especially for like the quant and the trading firms that use both of them. So it'll be a good skill set being able to like do this in a lot of like expert domains. Early days though, so I kind of hinted at this, but it is cloud-based, it's slow. There's some issues here too. You can't access your own code. So if you have this pricing function or whatever in your own library, you can't access it. You have no internet access. You can't push in large amounts of code. It's not going to talk to Git. That really sucks. The pro is you don't have add-ins. You don't need to like send code to people. It's very safe. So I think that's Microsoft, and I can think that's a good thing. They went for a super safe, super stable solution first, and then they're going to build on it. Before you get too excited, platform is Windows only to start with. I'm normally on Mac, so I had to fire up an old laptop for this. It's coming to other platforms, so they're committed to it, but there's no timeline. It's this wonderful coming later. We have no idea what that means. Web version will be interesting because I don't like Excel on the web, but it's getting better. And if you have it there, then it's going to be running together with the data. So the cloud compute makes a lot of sense if you're thinking Excel in the cloud, and then sharing becomes even easier. So that's, cross your fingers for a good one there. This one is kind of scary. While in preview, blah, blah, blah is free, but then more details generally will be. So they're saying something that we will probably charge something for this in the future beyond your Office license. And I mean, that's kind of fair. Excel is a paid product. We pay for good software. The problem, I guess, is sharing. Like if I think this is great because I can build a cool Excel sheet with Python and send it to all of you. If that requires that everyone has a license, it becomes much less fun. So or a specific license for like this add-on. So this one we're going to keep our eyes on before kind of adopting it broadly. If it's going to be like some kind of heavy data science license, that's going to limit the use a lot. I want to cover alternatives. So yeah, say you are not on Windows and you want to do this today. There are some pretty old open source ones. The best ones I found there was a really old one, which then turned into Excel Wings, which is a pretty solid thing, but much more technically complicated, much more setup. It has code outside of Excel. You put an Excel file, a Python file with the same name as Excel file in the same folder, that kind of thing. So it works. It will get Python into Excel for you, but it's very different and much more technically oriented. So that works. It's doable. Their commercial versions look better. There's 2 of them. You can also, like I said, build your own. You have COM, you have PyWin32, so you can always get things into Excel, but it's not fun. So regarding when to use this or not to use it, for you, anytime you want to do like analysis, modeling, and you're better at Python, this sounds great. Like, instead of writing complicated Excel formulas, a lot of things can be done so much easier. Excel is great, but you run into kind of a wall at a point, and then you need to code. And learning VBA is horrible. So for everybody here, this should mean that you can suddenly use Excel much more powerfully and more usefully. Anytime you want to do ML in Excel, I think that's a killer feature for Microsoft. Like just take my sales data, do some forecasting, spot on. Sharing docs, we'll see about the license and things there. And internet, this unfortunately we're really hoping. Like Python is great for doing things also like web scraping. Imagine I could have some Python code that just pulls a set of URLs or like gets keywords, puts them into Excel, I can do some analysis. So use Python to like just grab stuff from the internet and build that sheet. Like enter your product name and then we pull some keywords, put them in the sheet, the person can filter them, etc. And then you can push it somewhere. All of that is out because you don't have internet access. So waiting for that one. And I think that was it. So short version, Python is now in Excel. It's huge because there's so many Excel users and a lot of Python users. It's very early days, so don't commit your company to this like thing, saying that we're going to put our strategy into building it into Excel. I think it can boost Python a lot Python is already big among finance. That was my previous talk, but I think this can boost it further, especially get Python into much broader tiers that are maybe not so high skilled. So like broader accounting, for example. The big draw, pandas, AI. I think Python has such a good story on AI and ML, so that's kind of driving this for Microsoft. That has to be the big driver. I think it's less about replacing VBA and more about just riding the AI wave here. Definitely fun to play around with. Give it a spin. And then go watch the esport. That's a good way to get into Excel. And I think that's it. I'll take questions here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to ask a question. Currently, for example, in my job, I use the PyExcel add-in, and can this Python and Excel replace the PyExcel potentially? Because PyExcel is mostly working with libraries, but interesting to see how it can stand up between those two solutions?
Probably not yet. So if you're using like libraries or external libraries, then not, because you can't put anything into there. So, and if you're doing any kind of automation with PyExcel, if in any way you're controlling Excel or generating things, then no, not yet.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry about that, but I think you see it coming on the radar, but not yet.
Thanks for your talk. I had a lot of questions. You answered most of them during the talk, so that's great. Some really interesting stuff there. I'm wondering why they put Flask and Qt in there, but that's another whole other subject.
Oh, you spotted it? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of libraries in there, so you see crazy stuff. It's like a couple hundred.
Like the use case you mentioned with, I mean, I basically had exactly that use case working for a small startup, pricing products based on units. The way we solve it today is that we have an Excel sheet for the data entry people. They put in all the parameters. Then we pull that in with Pixel, PyExcel or whatever you call it, and do the stuff on the Python side there instead. I see this could be nice to be able, especially like the price generation stuff, because I guess you could not push stuff to a database and stuff like that from Excel directly.
No, not yet. Then you would have to have VBA. You would need to do like the modeling in Python and Excel, and then have like some VBA button to push it to the database.
Yeah, but I could put
the
like the price generation code in Excel directly, so the entry people could preview it before.
Exactly, and all the parameters in and whatever controls it.
Yeah, that would be nice. And then I have one question, like, I guess I cannot install my own libraries, my own code, so would I have to put all these functions into cells then?
Yes, you would, currently.
Yeah.
But worth mentioning, you could copy the sheet. So if you have like some kind of model and you can make 5 copies of it, and here's a tweaked one, here's another alternative, and then compare them. So for that kind of thing, it becomes really nice, where you can kind of like branch the code in Excel and then compare them and just work with it. So that is actually worth copying the code.
I would love to have your slides and your sheet afterwards, if it's possible.
Yeah, I will put them up somewhere.
Yeah.
Send the link.
Okay, thank you for your talk.
Hi. Can I go? Yeah, go ahead. Okay. So thanks for the talk. So I have 2 short questions. One is a bit technical, like, does it run if I, for example, execute everything and close the file, and if I open again, do I have the last state saved?
Yes.
Okay, good. And second question, is there some sort of privacy statement regarding, so we're not stuck to local runs, so we're going to have our code like being running elsewhere. And so let me rephrase this. If I have some IP protected code, how safe it is to run in there?
Good question. I have not read the license in detail, and this is one like, are you training an AI on my data? I have no idea. It's Microsoft, so they're pretty like enterprise friendly. So if you're paying for it, there's less of a chance of them automatically doing something. So that's a good thing with enterprise paying for it. But a disclaimer: I have not like detailed read this license. I'm waiting for the final one too. This is like a beta.
Thanks.
Can you offer some commentary on open source license compliance? So this looks a little bit messy, as in like it's a closed source product, it runs locally, the Python runtime runs in the cloud. Have you given some thought to that, and if so, what are your thoughts on it?
That's a very good question. I think it would be similar to like, I don't know, Google Colab or something, hosting a Python notebook as a paid service. So I think, and I'm not affiliated with Microsoft in any way. I think they're basically like they're running Python as an open source, and they're charging for like Excel and the integration. They're not really charging for the Python itself here, but it's similar to how you would offer a paid service that runs ML notebooks, and there's lots of those. Again, good point. I mean, you can check the license for what they're actually saying there, but I think it's compliant. I mean, from my view, this is how you kind of use open source a lot, so I think it's okay, but it is, I guess, complicated. Don't know.
So I have maybe more of an Excel question, but if you create a spreadsheet like this and make it nice, can you share the snapshot, so to speak, without the Python code? Could you take that nice first sheet and send it to someone with the data without the Python
I think you can, because what happens is if you just send the sheet, it has like the first question, all the values are stored there, and then it's going to ask you like the security warning. So there is a standard like, hey, this sheet has active content, you wish to enable it. So the person is basically not going to be able to enable it unless they're on the beta, and they can just say no. You could also like just copy paste all the values. So you could have like an Excel macro or something that just takes the whole sheet, copies it, pastes it as values, and then it's like everything is gone. They can't see the code. So it would require a little bit of work to do that, but I think overall it's definitely shareable, at least like a read-only thing. You can mark the sheet as read-only to you and send it to them.
Is it possible to execute VBA code from Python? Like, could you trigger a function that calls the internet via Python, but it runs in VBA?
Oh, yes.
To get around the no internet connection thing.
No, that's actually a very, very good idea. It's brilliant because you could definitely take the output of a Python cell, pass it into a VBA function, and then pass the output from that VBA function into Python.
It seems very hacky, but it could work.
Yeah, that would work. That would work beautifully. So you could make like an internet proxy there, like get_url or curl or something, but with VBA. That would work.
I have a similar question.
Yeah.
Over here.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Oh, there. Sorry, the sound is like here, so yeah.
Maybe a bad idea, but is it possible to, I was thinking that doing Python in Cell could be messy if you do too much of it. Would it be possible to load Python from VBA or something like that? You have a Python code externally.
I like this. Yes, you could pass a string in and then just eval. I mean, unless you think eval is evil, like evaluating kind of unknown code, but sure, that would work.
Great.
I think they left eval in there. I tried the internet access, it's definitely blocked, but eval would work. So yeah, really good questions. There are two nice ideas how to get around the beta limitations.
I have a question. I'm here.
Yeah, there.
I have a question about testing. How do you test your Python code you put in the Excel sheets?
Good. I mean, actually, that's one of the things that is, you can actually use Excel to test Python code. So you could have, I would say, a sheet which is like test, where you just do some, basic calls and then check the answers, and you do conditional formatting. So if it doesn't give you the right answer, you mark it as red. That would be kind of the nicest. So a separate sheet to test would work. Otherwise, there's no way to kind of access the code, so it has to be in this sheet. So the tests have to be in the same workbook as everything else.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the left.
Yeah.
Sorry. So currently, the limitation, at least I see it as a limitation, is that Python has to run on the cloud. Do you think that Microsoft will deliver like the server process so we could possibly run it on a local computer, and then a bit like a Jupyter server? So we could run the Python code in Excel locally?
It's a very good question. So, I mean, we don't know. We can say Microsoft has had a lot of problems with Excel and security. So like VBA macros were like a virus source, and they had to lock them down, and it's like all these warnings now. So my guess would be that they would be hesitant to putting something into Excel which could like, grab files or access your email or do scary stuff. And they're promoting this as being a very secure and safe solution. So I'm putting my money on it staying in the cloud and not accessing locally, and more of them maybe selling us like good GPUs and like, here you can access like, massive power for your Excel. That's the kind of direction they're taking.
Thanks.
I was just thinking about, to your right over here.
Yep.
I was thinking about, you make this Excel sheet, and let's say you spend a lot of time on it, and you're going to share with your stakeholders.
Yeah.
And so you've made it look a certain way, and I was thinking that in the future, as they keep doing development on this product, and the way they're embedding the graphs and they change it in the future, are you going to be able to like select like different versions of Excel? Because let's say like 2 years down the line, your code or whatever, when you run it, then it starts like looking all weird because they've changed stuff. You get what I mean? I'm not sure.
I get what you mean. It is a concern. I mean, I worked at banks when there was an Excel upgrade, like they did a major upgrade of Excel, and there was like a team of people who were responsible for testing every Excel workbook, and it was like a really big deal upgrading Excel versions. Then I think those are more early days. Now it's fairly stable, so you can open really, really old Excel sheets and the overall look and behave kind of the same. In this case, I mean, you have a different one too. You have the Python version. If they're going to start bumping the Python versions, you also need to think about upgrades there. Like if Python deprecates something, then you kind of have a problem.
Yeah, but I was thinking more of like, you know, because of how it's embedding these graphs in.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking more like UI, and you're dealing with stakeholders, like that sense of it. But do you think that's not going to be an issue in the future?
My experience with Excel is it's pretty stable. You build something, it kind of works. Microsoft gets a lot of crap if they do breaking changes in Excel. Looks like you have these huge complex workbooks. The person who built them has moved on. It's horrible if they break. So it's a case for them to be backwards compatible.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I think we are already done, and we can jump to the next talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.